evening. Thanks for joining us here at this latest edition of our social media marketing webinar series with Jennifer Cario. Social Media AMA with 2016 drawing to a close. Pardon me. Marketers are getting ready to revamp their strategies for the coming years. So Jen's here with her thoughts on what you're going to want to focus on next. This is an Ask Me Anything style Q&A webinar. It's a great chance to get input on all things social media for the coming year. So hopefully you've got some questions in the back of your mind to ask Jen. She's going to do a short presentation and then we'll get to the questions. If you're not familiar with who Jennifer Cario is, of course, I can't imagine why that would be, but let me take care of that. She is the president of Sugar Spun Marketing, a highly respected international speaker and trainer at industry conferences and by invitation to corporations around the world. She has served as adjunct professor for Rutgers University's online social media mini MBA program and is the author of 3 books, including Pinterest Marketing, An Hour a Day. Before we get rolling, I just want to give you a quick sense of how this is going to work and what to expect. So as I said, Jen's going to do a short presentation about upcoming trends and things you should be have your eyes open for. It's going to run maybe 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll get into as many of your questions as we possibly can. You're going to send us your questions through the question module. So let's just check and make sure that's working right now. Find the little question module, if you would, in your dashboard. A little field there says Ask a Question, I think is how it's labeled. Go ahead and say hi to Jen. Let her know how you're doing. You're looking forward to hearing what she's got to say. Let us know where you're joining us from. I'd be curious to know where folks are joining us from today. I know we usually get folks from all around the globe, and I see Lindsay is here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Fantastic. I have never been, but I understand it's a great place to at least visit, if not live. I see Angela is in Washington State. Jessica's here from Maryland. Doug's here. Mayank is here from Rishikesh, India. Fantastic. Around the other side of the globe. Faye's here from Vancouver. Rikers Island. Shilpa's here from India. Chicago. Faye says just joking. I was hoping so. And Kathy's here and wishes a happy holiday to everybody. All right, this is great. This means that the audio is obviously working. You're hearing me. I'm not just speaking into the void of GoToWebinar, and we are able to get underway. Use that questions module all you want during the presentation and after to pose questions about any of the things Jen talks about or about anything that she didn't talk about that you want to ask with regard to social media trends moving into 2017. If you've got a personal challenge with one of your campaigns or something and you want to get a little insight into maybe the best next step, Jen might be able to address that for you too. So I think that's all you need to hear from me. Without further ado, return your seats and tray tables to a full and upright position. Observe the no smoking sign. Remember, no flash photography. I'm going to put myself on mute. Jen, I will let you take over.
All right. Well, Chip, I'll tell you right now that when we come to the Q&A, if Lindsay has a question, she goes to the front of the line because she's in Pittsburgh. And Lindsay, I'm just down the way from you in Washington County, so not too far away at all.
All
so,
right, fair enough.
Front of the line, go Pittsburgh. Okay. So launching into this, I don't know about the rest of you. I'm betting Chip agrees with me on this one. If you're anything like me, you cannot wait to say goodbye to 2016, and you are so ready to be done with this year. Now, on the social front, there were definitely some interesting things that happened, but I think all of us are really looking forward, you know, on the whole, to seeing what the new year is going to bring us. So before we kind of dive into that and some of the predictions coming from the industry and sort of what my personal thoughts are on those, I want to do a little bit of looking back because there were some pretty significant changes to the social media landscape, some of which were kind of new and introductions and some of which were sort of the tipping point where we saw some ideas that had been introduced earlier really start to become sort of mainstream. So one of the big ones was definitely the push into live video. Well, live video launched a couple years ago through Periscope and, you know, on Twitter and some other places. It was really when Facebook decided to push Facebook Live out to everyone, not just businesses, but to everyone. And I don't know if you've noticed the TV commercials popping up now that apparently we're all supposed to live broadcast our Thanksgiving dinner or, you know, our birthday parties. That's the big push. And in general, if Facebook decides to adopt something and push it, you're going to see some pretty good adoption points coming into play. Interesting thing to note is they actually just announced yesterday that the launch was coming for live 360 video. In fact, National Geographic is going to be the beta test today at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. So if you're interested in checking out to see what live 360-degree video is going to look like on Facebook, National Geographic will be broadcasting the crew members coming out of the Mars Desert Research Station facility. They've been in there for 80 days, and it'll be the first time that they've kind of come out and had contact with everyone again. So this will be interesting to see because obviously, live is getting pushed, but we know that 360 view, especially with sort of augmented reality and virtual reality coming into play, we know that that's going to be something that there's a big push for this year. Also, with Facebook having sort of the API in place that allows you to broadcast your live feed through a third-party video. It doesn't just have to be from your phone. Obviously, that's going to open up the door, I would guess, for both the 360 and the 180 cameras for people to be able to broadcast the video feed through those. So maybe you're not necessarily doing a full 360 because not everyone has that capability, but Nikon's got a little camera now for I think about $350 that does some pretty incredible 4K quality 180-degree video streaming or video recording. So, things like that I think we'll see come into the mix. Another thing that happened this last year is Instagram kind of took a shot across the bow at Snapchat, or Snap as it's now becoming called. Instagram still tops the chart as a millennial favorite, and that's something important to remember, even for all the conversation we've had about Snapchat. And if you were on last month's webinar, you heard we kind of covered what was going on with Snapchat marketing now. Instagram's still at the top, but Snapchat was kind of nipping at its heels, and we'd seen a lot of growth in Snapchat. Of course, with Facebook owning Instagram, there's a little bit more power and a little more money back there to do some development. So with Instagram launching stories and Instagram and Snapchat sort of going head-to-head as that sort of real-time, up-to-the-minute live feed of what's going on in your life and your ability to broadcast out those curated stories that change over time because everything drops off of that 24-hour window. That's one of the big changes that we did see pop up this last year, was kind of that idea that instead of having a ready-made, upfront, sort of fully screened story or video or article or infographic, that there's a little bit more of a real-time feed. And again, between stories and the live video on Facebook, we're really starting to see things trend in that direction of how can you actively engage people so they feel like they're actually part of maybe the decision making or what's going to happen next, or that they're experience discovery at the same time as other people. So that's a big change that we really kind of saw come into the mainstream this past year. Another big one, fake news. That was definitely a massive, massive issue this past year. Sites like Snopes, no longer enough to fight off that barrage of fake news and even just propaganda. We know with the Brexit vote, with the U.S. Elections, and even all sorts of things mixed in between, there was a lot of issues with some of these sites popping up that just blatantly, it's not even spin, it's not even different perspective, but just blatantly reporting absolutely fake news. Mobile is another big one. Again, mobile's been a player for years, but I think this year is going to be the one that kind of goes on the tipping point level where everybody really started to fully embrace it. A lot of the people coming on social media, even for the first time in a lot of the emerging markets, they don't have desktop access. The only access they have into the social world is via a mobile device or a tablet or a handheld device. So that's definitely something where we're going to start to see that shift in how people are spending a greater majority of their time accessing social media. Is a lot more of it's going to come through handheld devices rather than desktop units or solid stable units. And with Google really kind of shifting around their algorithm to put an increased focus on mobile and mobile capabilities, I think this really becomes the year we're moving forward. We have to accept that mobile is no longer a second thought. It's no longer an also has, much like social media has become a fully integrated part of marketing in general. Mobile has become a fully integrated part of how people can expect to engage with our brands and with our content. Another big one that kind of ties back a little bit we've long touted the ability of like-minded people to come together and share information, share thoughts, share resources, that influencers sort of arise within different groups that have the ability to really sway public opinion. But I think this last election, and again, the Brexit vote, really shined that light on the reality of social media echo chambers and how easy it is for people to have an inaccurate perception of global views or even regional views based on the limited connection points that they have. Because with all of the algorithms coming in place on Facebook and Twitter and even Instagram is going to be having one come in here before too long, and Pinterest, there's been this goal to make sure we're showing people content that they like. Well, generally the content people like is the content that they tend to already agree with or believe in. And so that's really kind of created some challenges in social media. And I think it's one of the big truths that came out this year that we need to look at moving forward, is what it means to understand that people sort of have their social connections predefined now. Again, there's new people coming online and there's always going to be some growth, but social media has kind of been here long enough that people have settled in and they're comfortable with who they connect with and with the environments that they're interacting in. And that doesn't always leave a lot of space for new ideas or new perspectives or new thoughts to come into play. So clearly on a societal or a political spectrum that presents its challenges, but we also have to recognize that that's going to impact us on the marketing side when we're trying to get into new markets, when we're trying to share new features, when we're trying to kind of jump some of those gaps to say, hey, wait, you might not know about us, but let's get into the mix there. Another big one that's actually going to be on the list for 2017 of what we'll be talking about is augmented reality and virtual reality, really kind of stepping up this year. I think Pokemon Go, while it sort of had its big spike and the initial fervor has kind of died down a little bit, the thing that it taught us for 2016 is that the door really is open to creative applications for both augmented reality and virtual reality, and that people are excited and happy and interested in engaging with things in that type of environment. And so I think with a lot of the technology that's going on, and again, I'm going to touch on those here a little bit later, and I'm hoping that that takes up some of the discussion we have today, because I'm really excited about some of the augmented reality applications for social media. But this was really kind of the test it and prove it, and hey, yeah, this is going to work. So what can we develop and how can we get it implemented? Another big area that we saw a lot of growth and a lot of kind of eye-opening in 2016 was an increased interest in more private social communication. So clearly we know that people have their public-facing networks, who you connect with on LinkedIn or Facebook or even Twitter, but the growth of Snapchat and WhatsApp and Facebook Messenger, we see a lot of consumers turning their backs on that public-facing social media for some types of messaging in favor of direct messaging. Again, knowing that it's broadcasting to a smaller or more select group of people, which lets you feel more comfortable being open about maybe the non-curated version of your life. And so one of the things that we've started to see pop up with that as well is clearly there's going to be a need for businesses to understand how to engage in those ways and to figure out where we can break in versus where it's going to be not just disruptive marketing, but interruptive and angering marketing to try and get into the mix there. So with all of that said, it's kind of the question is, what does the future hold for social media? Again, some years we see more change than others, so part of the question is 2017 going to be one of those game-changing years? And I think on the virtual reality and augmented reality front, I think we definitely have the potential to see that happen. And also within the messaging space, I think there's a lot of room to see that happen. Or is it going to be a year that's maybe a little more focused on reasonable growth and taking the time to kind of refine some things? So let's take a look at some of what the big predictions coming out across social media channels. I kind of spent some time going through the roundup, seeing all the different sites that have put out their predictions for next year and kind of trying to aggregate it together to see what the biggies were and then kind of what my thoughts were on it. So one of the first one is the idea that social media channels are going to attempt to become a vacuum where everything you want to need is contained within. So the example that I keep giving people, and Chip, you've heard me say this a million times, Facebook wants to be America Online. They want to be the place that you connect to the moment you get on the internet, that you do all your messaging, that you do your shopping, your browsing, your news reading, that everything's happening within Facebook. And we're seeing more attempts from Facebook, we're seeing more attempts from LinkedIn. We'll be seeing some more stuff come out from Twitter to get companies to put their full content within these realms as opposed to kind of the teaser content and then linking into the full content on your website. So that's one of the huge predictions. Now, personally, I say you need to resist this. Now, we know Facebook and LinkedIn are pushing it, but giving in entirely and just saying, okay, fine, this is going to be my presence online, it's a mistake. I'm telling you, it's a mistake. Don't do it. At best, choose some forms of content or some versions of your content and go ahead and publish them. Take advantage of those new platforms that are coming out. By all means, be publishing some content straight into Facebook, be publishing some long-form content straight into LinkedIn, but you have to make sure that anything you're putting out on social media has the ability to tie back in to your site, to get that traffic in, to get those links in, to get that conversion experience, the trackability. Make sure you keep the best stuff on your site. Again, I'm not saying don't participate at all, but I'm saying from a marketing perspective and from the limited ability to kind of police and care for and value and measure everything that goes on a third-party site, it is a mistake to just give up the ghost on everything that you've created for yourself. All right, the second one, social media world says messaging. Public-facing channels will still be important, but in 2017, the massive growth is going to start happening with messaging apps and bots, very similar to what we see with email marketing, but with a little bit more of a real-time or interactive perspective. I say I completely agree. As one-to-one communication starts to shift from email to messaging, and we kind of saw it shift from email to text, so obviously a lot of companies have kind of shifted gears, and I'm sure I'm not the only person who has plenty of text messages come in with this discount or this special offer or this deal that's happening. We're going to see a lot of that start to shift to messaging as well. In fact, keep in mind that there's a lot of places where SMS messages are charged per message. You know, not every country has unlimited text messaging like a lot of us have here in the United States. That's a big reason why a lot of these messaging programs like WhatsApp and Line and, you know, WeChat, why they're doing so well. So you need to make sure that as people start to not fully abandon email, but as a lot of that conversation shifts out of email, it's going to be important to at least give people the option to connect with you that way. I don't know how many of you might shop off the mobile app Wish, but Wish does pretty much all of the customer service interactions via Facebook messaging now. And on a pretty regular basis, I'll get a ping on Messenger, and it's, you know, here's the new offer, or here's the reminder of what's going on, or here's a special code. And with a lot of the apps and the bots that are now available to be integrated with Facebook messaging, I think we're going to continue to see a lot of growth there. Okay, the next one, social media world says storytelling. Now clearly storytelling is sort of already cracked the mainstream, but the general consensus is we're going to continue to see more growth and more focus on leveraging storytelling within social media. I say I agree. With the introduction, or not the introduction, but sort of the tipping point of live video, with the curated story feeds popping up on Instagram, popping up on Snapchat, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if we see something similar start to pop up or at least get tested on Twitter or Facebook, both of which it would make sense to have them come into the mix. I think that idea of a relevant, interactive narrative taking place with consumers, that has a lot of potential, and I think it's something that really needs to be in the back of your mind coming into this next year, is if you're not playing with any of those tactics now, it's a very good idea to say, okay, what would it look like for us to do this? What can we test it with? You know, what makes sense for us to, you know, go in? Where's our target market at? Because if your target market is not hanging out on Snapchat and Instagram right now, then something like Facebook Live is going to make a lot more sense to you. If you're targeting millennials, you're definitely going to want to look a little bit more at something like Snapchat or Instagram. All right, the next one, social media world says, and this has been a big topic in the last month, policing. Whether we're talking about fake news, cyberbullying on Twitter, or hacking into accounts, expect to see more and more call for a policed and regulated internet. Now again, this one gets really tough because if someone's going to police it, who's going to do it? For the most part, it would have to fall back on the channels themselves to figure out what their policies would look like and what they put in place. Clearly, Twitter and Facebook are both testing some of these options right now, as are some of the others, but that idea of something where, you know, human being is deciding what's right to go in and what's not, that leads me to say balance, because anytime policing gets involved, the people with the most power get to define what is and is not okay. So this is a fine line for channels to walk. And I'm going to be very curious to kind of watch and observe and see what this looks like, because while it's not something that I think directly impacts our marketing right now or what we're necessarily going to do next year, it is going to have a heavy impact on the tone and sort of the atmosphere and the environment that takes place in some of these channels, as well as with the people who are there. Because again, if you see a specific viewpoint or mindset really starting to dominate on a specific channel and other viewpoints are cracked down on, you're going to see a whole groundswell of people leaving, looking for someplace else to go where those viewpoints are more accepted. So I think there's some interesting risk and potential involved with this idea, and this is one that I just kind of encourage us all to kind of keep an eye on. Okay, another one. Social media world says virtual reality and augmented reality are the next big stage in social media evolution, that it will be the integration of virtual and augmented reality on existing channels and on new channels. I say absolutely. This is the one that I absolutely agree with the most, that I am most excited about. I cannot stress enough how on point I think this is for the future of the social media industry, particularly in the augmented reality world. And that's one of those places where I think I do vary a little bit from sort of some of the general industry consensus. Is right now everyone's talking about virtual reality because Facebook has purchased Oculus and has started to, release some samples and some videos of what it would look like to sort of interact in Facebook, but in that virtual reality world where you're sort of, representatively showing up and connecting in what they view as a face-to-face connection. I think there's potential there. I think we're a little bit further out from really seeing price points come down enough to really make that applicable. I think the augmented reality on the other side, there's a lot more things there right now that I think can more easily be adapted via, phone apps that don't necessarily require the more expensive virtual reality headsets and units. And I think we're going to be able to see AR come into place a lot more quickly. A couple quick examples on these, and then I'm wrapping up and ready for Q&A. One, if we're looking at AR integration, I'm really excited about the idea of social media tagged content being overlaid on physical locations. So for example, if I've geotagged something in Facebook, because maybe I've checked into a location, maybe I've written a review on Yelp, I would love the concept of an app that integrates that on my phone so that I might be able to hold my phone up and scan a street, in downtown New York City because I'm looking for a restaurant and actually see that overlay of, hey, Chip Street has done a review on Yelp of this location. Matt McGee did a review of Yelp on this location. So being able to physically see some of that social media content in that real world environment. Shared virtual experiences with your social connections, that one's clearly going to fall in a little bit more on the virtual reality side. AR overlays in physical locations tied to online deals or ads. Now what I mean with this, as opposed to sort of that social media tagged content, is let's see, if you're in the US or Canada and you shop at Target and you use their Cartwheel app, if you go into your Cartwheel app, you can pick an item, you can tell them what store they're in, and they will put a visual map up and tell you exactly what aisle it shows on. So, you can say, okay, well, I just need to go, up and to the left and do such and such. I think what we're going to start to see in some of those apps is that AR overlay where you're holding your phone up in front of you and you're actually actively looking at the aisle, and we're going to see those arrows pop up. Think of the colored arrows that show up on the floor sometimes in hospital to lead you to, the ICU versus the CVU versus, the NICU. I think we're going to see some of that come into play with phones, where we've got more ability to, again, get that visual overlay. Think of, Pokemon Go and the fact that you could see the character, sitting right in front of you through your phone, but of course you take your phone away and it's not there. I think some of that level of interaction is going to be a big part of what shows up as marketing opportunity this coming year. And then finally, don't count out Microsoft HoloLens and off-site, on-site engagement. If you haven't done much viewing of some of the videos that show up on YouTube, both for the virtual reality, like through Oculus or through PlayStation's virtual reality headset, or if you haven't gone and checked out Microsoft HoloLens, take a look at it, because some of the application there, things like the real estate companies that are mapping out entire houses, and so you can go and put the HoloLens in, and you can go to one location and actually physically walk through like 10 houses in the span of an hour. So, you could be in New York and you could be checking out 10 different houses in San Francisco. A lot of the HoloLens capabilities kind of tie into some of the virtual reality, but there's a lot of augmented reality options with it where we're not kind of closing out the world around us, we're simply overlaying something on top of what we're already dealing with. And I think you're going to see a higher comfort level from consumers in engaging with that type of environment as opposed to something where once you put that mask on, you literally, someone could walk up in front of you and punch you in the face and you wouldn't know they were there. So I think we'll see easier adoption coming in on the AR side. All right, so Chip, that's kind of all I've got for here. So I'm looking to hear thoughts and where people are thinking of expanding or what other trends or predictions they've heard or whatever the heck we want to talk about.
You got it. Yeah, so this is finally going to be the year of mobile, I heard you say. Should we let Jeff Hassan know that this year is finally actually the year that...
I kind of think 2016 was the year of mobile. I'd like to think mobile's done and not done, but they have their shining light. Let's focus on something more fun like AR or VR and say, okay, yeah, everyone needs mobile. We know that. So just design for it and don't worry about it. But yeah, don't tell Jeff I said that. He might not agree.
He's been saying it's the year of mobile for about 4 or 5 years now, so
exactly.
We'll see how that pans out. Before we get to the questions, and we do have a couple, I'm going to go ahead and take care of what I like to call my contractually obligated poll moment here. I'm going to take 60 seconds to just throw this poll up on the screen for folks. Webinars, of course, is just a little part of what we do here at Market Motive. It's a perk for our members, and we do 7 or 8 of these every month across a variety of disciplines. We do content marketing, we do SEO, we do PPC and mobile, and obviously social media. And we make these available to the public now as sort of a service to the community. We love to do that and share the insights of our SMEs with everybody, and that's terrific, but it is not all that we do. This is public facing, so you may or may not otherwise be familiar with the other things that Market Motive is involved in. Our core service is that we are a training publisher. We create web-based digital marketing training curricula that are used by higher education institutions like Duke University and Rutgers. Their courses are licensed by agencies and professional organizations. They're used by in-house enterprise teams to bring new hires on board more quickly, make them more effective more quickly, get the teams all speaking the same language and kind of get out of those silos by cross-training folks across these various disciplines. These are structured courses with streaming videos, downloadable workbooks, quizzes, tests, exercises. You can apply them to your real-world challenges and put the knowledge that you're gaining to work right away. You also get access to moderated forums. You can interact directly with the faculty and other students. You can ask questions about the materials. You can get a little guidance on how to apply the lessons to what your real-world marketing challenges might be. So, if you want to know more, there's no obligation, but tick the appropriate box. Somebody will get in touch with you, give you a backstage tour, maybe help you figure out which membership level or which course is the appropriate one for you to focus on so that you can meet your personal or your business goals. And they'll be happy to help. Like I said, no obligation, but you'll get a free tour. We've already got your email because it's attached to your registration information here on GoToWebinar. So someone will get a hold of you by email. If you want to fast track it a little bit and you'd rather have somebody call you, you can just drop your phone number into the question module. We'll be the only ones who see it. I don't think it'll share with everybody else who's here with us today. But it'll be attached to your profile, and that way we'll have someone call you as opposed to do the email dance. All right. I'm always appreciative of you indulging me for that 60 seconds. I'm going to close this now, so thanks for putting up with me. And we should go back to Jen's screen here. GoToWebinar is a little pokey today about catching up. There we are. We're on the wrap-up now. So, yes, we do have some questions in the system here. So first off, Courtney is asking, the launch of Instagram Stories definitely shook up content planning for a lot of this year. If a Stories type feature is added to even more social media platforms in the coming year, do you think it would be best to diversify the content on the various channels, or should you recycle your Stories content and just redisplay it on various story-enabled platforms?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. Good job. I think it's a combination of both. I think there's times where it makes sense to broadcast kind of the duplicate message or the same thing out across other channels. But we also need to kind of be aware of what the tone and the mindset and the interaction style is on different channels. And I think you also need to be careful that what you're putting out sort of matches that. So, for example, we did a workshop, I think it was within this last year, Chip probably remembers better than I do, where we talked about taking one piece of content and kind of formatting it and having it ready to go out into different channels. You know, what does it look like to put it on Facebook if you want to get engagement and shares and interaction? How do you put it out on Twitter? Because maybe on Twitter you might be sharing it, 10 times over the span of a week with a lot of different lead-ins. How do you put it on Pinterest? Well, again, Pinterest may have several versions with several different images and several different calls to action. There's different environments there. That story concept, because it's similar across the board, I think there needs to be some measure of exclusivity in some of the content. Otherwise, there's not really a reason for people to follow you in more than one place. So if the majority of people are following you, say, on Facebook right now, and Facebook launches stories, but you also want to pull that millennial audience in on Instagram or on Snapchat, clearly you're going to need to have some content that's only going out to Snapchat or Instagram so you can give people that reason to come over and engage with you there. There's also a far less formal sort of format and style of what goes on to Snapchat in particular, and I think that same level or style of content on Facebook would not play anywhere near as well.
Yeah, that makes total sense. The demos are so different across some of these. I have absolutely no interest in Snapchat myself. I'm just way too old.
It's because you're old.
You're not going to find me there unless I'm trying to spy on my kids. Hopefully, Courtney, that answered your question. It's sort of a follow-up from Lindsay, which is along the same vein, which is just, we presume is also necessary to create unique content between, say, Facebook and LinkedIn, disregarding the stories aspect. Or do you think it's sufficient to just share the same content on either one of those two channels and link it back to your blog?
Again, some content it's fine to go ahead and sort of put the teaser out there, but if you're going to look at engaging with sort of the long-form content that shows up on these channels, so like, Facebook allows you to publish content directly into Facebook now, and they'll even insert your ads and other stuff into it, as does LinkedIn. LinkedIn Pulse has actually shown that people on that particular site, they like longer content, something that's around 1,200, 1,500 words. That tends to be the sweet spot on LinkedIn, but if you try to publish a piece of content of that length on Facebook, you wouldn't get the same reception. So I'd encourage you to do a little digging on what some of those optimum sizes are. Again, there's plenty of companies out there that do millions and millions of A/B split tests and then release their results to the public for the rest of us to use. Checking out some of that. Sometimes it's just a different format. Maybe you're putting a summarized version on Facebook and maybe you're putting the full form content on LinkedIn. It's knowing what the audience is.
Absolutely, that makes pardon me, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, Hootsuite and Buffer are two places that do a great job of sharing the results of they've got just such immense data on this, because they're not just using their own data, but they're using the data of all their users, to sort of see what engagement is like on different kinds of content on different channels. So looking at Hootsuite and at bufferapp.com are two great places to see some.
And HubSpot.
And HubSpot, yes, thank you.
That's the third one. Yeah, all three of them are very generous with their data.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, let's see. Doug is asking, how do you see marketing advertising playing out in the AR and VR sphere? That's a great question. I mean, are we just going to see sort of billboards appearing in front of us through our wearables as we're walking down the street? What do you see the short and long term on that? Oh, Jen, did we lose you? Oh dear, I fear we may have lost Jen. All right.
Can you guys hear me now?
Ah, there we go. Now you're back.
Yeah, okay. All right, I thought you vanished, but I vanished. Sorry about that. Okay, so I think I caught most of that. So you were asking about the marketing and advertising sort of tie-in within an AR and a VR world and what that might look like?
Yeah, short and long term, what do you think that's going to evolve like?
Okay, I think short term it's going to be a little simpler. I think short term we're going to see some fun apps come out that, maybe they're games like Pokemon Go, and it's going to be sort of this simple inserted advertising where, maybe I'm walking around in that augmented reality world hunting for, Pikachu in a Santa hat because that just came out this week, and maybe you have the ability to overlay a billboard with your message. So I'm out hunting, but I'm still seeing your marketing message. Maybe I can click on it within the app and it'll take me over to your website. I think that's going to be the simplest, easiest starting point that we're going to see. But I think as some of these options become more sophisticated, that's where we're going to open the door into some of these experiences. So again, maybe that means that there's a OpenTable or Yelp or someone like that adds an overlay that's a paid option for businesses where, again, I hold my phone up and I'm scanning the street, and maybe if you've paid that access fee, the name of your restaurant is going to show up, tied to you, and there's going to be a link to view your menu. So I can quickly, based on that geographical location, jump straight into some of that data. I think we're going to see some of those pop up. And then, like I mentioned with Target and Cartwheel, the ability to maybe walk into, the Gap or Macy's or someplace like that and click something in my email that they've sent me that's a discount, and it's going to put the arrows on the floor in front of me to take me directly to that item in the store so I don't have to hunt for it. I think that's going to be the first and easiest applications we're going to see pop up on the marketing side.
That's such a science fiction world, and I'm just imagining it in my head as you're
cool
saying
and
it.
creepy all at the same time, but
It's
think of
cool.
Minority Report. Is that where Tom Cruise walks past the
Yeah,
Gap and and they're trying to sell him a sweater to go with the khakis he bought last week because they scanned his eyeballs?
exactly, exactly. That's what I was gonna
Yeah.
say. It's cool and it's creepy and it's also incredibly lazy because I'm trying to imagine, like I'm standing at the end of the block and it's like, well, I don't want to walk 3 doors down and look at their menu in the window. I want to stand in one place and scan the street. It would be great if that also, of course, incorporated something like, how many open tables are available right now? Or
Right.
at the very least, this is a peak time of the day, as
Yes.
opposed to other times of the day, because otherwise I still need to walk down the street and just kind of check it out. Like, do I like the look and feel of the place? Is it super crowded? Is it really noisy?
Right.
Those may or may not be things that we get in that overlay, um, but it's pretty fascinating nevertheless. Um,
Well, and
let's
let's turn the before we go to the next question, let's turn the tables on that real quick and let's look at some of that downside, because we tend to get really excited about, options and what's popping up. And like with Pokemon Go, everyone kind of got excited because people got out and got physically active, right? Because you had to walk to play the game. You had to go and
yeah.
explore in that environment. Now, when we were at PubCon this year, Robert Scoble gave the keynote, and he was talking about Microsoft HoloLens and some of the virtual reality options. And one of the things that he said, everyone got really excited about, and I'm sitting back there, and I feel like I probably had this look of horror on my face, going, "Okay, how is anyone not seeing the other side of this?" Because what he said was that the virtual reality that they're actually, because of how it impacts your brain, they're using it for pain management techniques with athletes, because it can help, the same way that what are those little things that like you attach to the nodes and it makes the muscles vibrate or whatever,
Oh
that
yeah,
kind
yeah.
of, yeah, a TENS unit. Yeah, the TENS units can help with pain relief, that this also does. And then the thing that he said that made me go, oh wait, was that the virtual reality interface was more effective than morphine at managing pain, which is cool on one front, but doesn't that also make you say, okay, but morphine's addictive, and so wouldn't that mean that a virtual reality environment is also more addictive than morphine is? And we know what's happened to people with their smartphones in the last decade. So what's that going to mean on the virtual reality and even augmented reality front? Like you said, it's that laziness. It's cool technology, but do we then, what does that do societally? That's a whole other ethics issue, but I just have to throw that out there for people to think about.
Thanks, Jen, for being such a. Actually, I think that's my fault. I started that talking about how lazy people are. But yeah, how many science fiction stories have we read that take place in
Yep,
some sort of dystopic future where people are sitting in chairs, and not against their own free will, like in The Matrix,
right.
living a false life, but
But like in Wall-E.
by design, like in Wall-E,
Yeah,
You know, I forget what the series is. I think it's Burning Chrome, maybe. I think it's Bill Gibson, maybe, talks about stim sims and people being plugged in and just
Yeah.
kind of lost forever in their little virtual world, not wanting to come out. So long range, who knows?
Yeah.
It's a little scary, but in the short term, you know, seeing the overlays, let's just focus on the manageable marketing aspect of it. It feels like augmented reality in the short term is still going to be through, and this goes a little bit to something Faye is asking, which is, do you see Google Glasses or other kinds of wearables like that coming back because of the opportunities in augmented reality for marketing, as well as just interacting with you know, the environment around you? And it feels a little bit like until that happens, most of the AR is still going to be through a handheld device where you have to make the decision to hold your phone up.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be, in terms of marketing, necessarily interruption marketing,
Right.
where, you know, suddenly a billboard appears in front of your face as you're walking down the street, the way we saw in Minority Report. You'll still be making the decision, at this moment I want to hold up my phone and look around me.
Right.
And so
But
you'll be...
that's, keep in mind, it starts as a decision, but it's not, do you really make the decision to pull your phone out to get directions to someplace, or is it just so intrinsic to you now that it's not really a conscious decision, it's just what you do?
That's fair enough, yeah. Yeah, I
Because, you
can't
know,
imagine
it's
not
what you
having
get
my
used
phone.
to. Exactly. So I think on the AR side, I think the marketing and sort of the, even some of the social interaction, how we see those tie-ins taking place, I think we're going to see it limited, or not limited, but predominantly taking place through a phone for probably at least the next year, if not maybe 2 or 3, because the issue with things like Google Glass and Microsoft HoloLens, which from what I can see, you know, not having had a chance to use HoloLens because they're not really, you know, out there yet. It's only some specific press that have had a chance to play with them. It looks like HoloLens really does a great job of accomplishing what Google Glass set out to accomplish. Now, does that mean Google will circle back around and try and redevelop to, you know, kind of match or be on par with? Well, you know, Google's not really going to get left behind by Microsoft, right? So I would imagine we'll see something there. And even when we look at Snapchat, putting the Snap Spectacles together that will now, you know, record whatever you're looking at and automatically feed it into your phone so that you can be taking that live video, you know, from your glasses and, you know, adding that to your Snap story. I think we're going to see some integration into the headsets like that. But the biggest issue right now is going to be cost, right? You know, smartphones have finally reached the point where they're affordable for almost everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And until we see that tipping point of the technology that's found in something like a HoloLens or something like, you know, the Google Glass being affordable, you know, until it comes down low enough that it's affordable, I think we're going to see most of it restricted to phone. So I think we're several years away from reaching that point. And of course, by the time we reach that point, they're already going to have some, you know, implant or other thing put in place where you're not really wearing glasses, right? But you're still getting it projected in front. It'll be contact lenses or whatever else.
At the risk of keeping us talking about this as opposed to moving on to the next question, I'm just going to ask you and anyone else out there if you've watched Black Mirror on Netflix.
I haven't, should I?
You should, yeah.
Okay.
Black Mirror is a science fiction series that is essentially like a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a continuing storyline from one to the next. It's a collection of short stories, sort of. So there's no
Okay.
continuing character from one to the next, but it all takes place in this alternative future where all the things that we're talking about right now are kind of meshed with the idea of the Tom Cruise movie and whatnot, where folks have these lenses in their eyes and a little implant behind their ear, and everywhere they can look at someone. Facial recognition tells them what that person's score is and where they work and what their work history is and so forth. And it's also surrounded by advertising constantly. So if you want to get a little snapshot of what it's going to look like, that's, yeah. Luis is saying...
Ready Player One.
Ready Player One, yeah, that's something I'm actually not familiar with, but
you need
I
to
should
read the
check
book.
it out.
Yeah,
Luis is saying Black Mirror is pretty good, highly recommended to any technologist and marketers most especially. So,
cool.
yeah,
Okay.
Definitely something as marketers we need to look at. Not every episode is great, but it's really fascinating stuff. So Faye, yeah, we think Google Glasses or something like that are going to work their way back in, but they're not going to be meaningful until they're really as affordable and ubiquitous as cell phones are currently right now.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let's see. Mayank has a general question. What's your views on organic versus paid social media marketing?
I think we have to accept the fact that organic brand-driven social media marketing has now reached a point where it is exceedingly difficult, and thus for a lot of companies it is far more realistic to expect to have a combination of paid and organic because really you're paying for it either way. You're either paying in the development costs and the management costs of putting together consistently amazing organic content to be able to maintain that push, or you're balancing it with targeted advertising. And because the advertising options are so laser targeted and focused and like audiences and remarketing and everything else, I think it's just realistic for people to expect to have a combination. I think the free ride part of social media is over, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Whoop, sorry, I was still on mute. All right, perfect. Mayank, I hope that gives you a little bit of insight into what you were looking for there. Andrew is asking, when will Facebook have AR built into the capability of the platform so that developers can build native apps? Got your crystal ball on you?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I was watching yesterday from when Facebook did their Oculus conference, and Mark Zuckerberg did like a live demo on like from the stage where he connected with the his first name's Michael, but I can't remember his last name, the guy within Facebook who's kind of leading the charge on what they're doing with virtual reality, and kind of took us through a tour of different things. What did it look like to have 3 people gathered and to play cards, and then suddenly someone whips out a lightsaber and instead they're sword fighting, and then hey, let's go take a tour of Paris, and now we're walking through Paris and we're actually taking a photo of ourselves standing in front of the Eiffel Tower and publishing it straight to our social media channel. Facebook has that environment created for internal testing purposes, and they've started to show it off a little bit. And you can definitely go to YouTube and look up some of the videos, and you can really see what it looks like at play, but they haven't yet announced any dates of when they expect things to begin to launch or to begin to become accessible. My guess is that it won't necessarily come online and be accessible to us in 2017, but that by the end of 2017 we'll have the dates, like we'll have some type of projected expectation, and we'll also know what types of sort of software it will work with. Is it only going to work with Oculus since Facebook bought it, or would you be able to use your HoloLens or your PlayStation setup, or heck, I don't know if you've seen the Google Cardboard. Can you use the Google Cardboard thing that you slot your phone into and you use that for your virtual reality world? There's a lot of tie-in that has to come in to really be able to have them give us dates. So I don't expect it next year. Again, that's why I'm saying I think AR is going to be the thing that we really see a lot more actual, hey, we can access this and use this now technology pop up in 2017, and I think virtual reality is still going to be a little further down the road than that.
That makes good sense. It's interesting to hear, though, how Facebook is, moving forward with this, and their time to market on these things is really pretty stunning in the overall. When you think of it overall, in the old days, how long was it before we finally got to proper LCD flat screens? And
right.
now, and they were out of reach for so many people price-wise, and they just seemed so, so. What's the word I'm looking for? Like a luxury,
Yeah.
and now who has a CRT anymore, right? I mean, everything is flat screen, and it took 10 years maybe to go from one to everybody having UHD and 4K. It's not going to take that long for these other things to come online, because I think that the population is more hungry for the new content or the new technology. And Facebook and Google and Microsoft just have, all the money in the world and all the resources in the world to just really push these things through their development.
Well, and Chip, consider the multiple applications. In a world where you're using a HoloLens as it is right now will project the equivalent of a 130-inch screen onto the wall in front of you, so you can watch, any window or video or whatever. It'll do 4K video. So why do I need, we've got a 90-inch screen and, full surround sound, in the walls and everything set up in our basement. We have a theater in our basement. What do we need that for if I can put on my HoloLens and, I've still got all of the sound quality and I can project 130 inches and Matt could sit on the couch next to me with his HoloLens and watch a completely different movie. We're snuggled up, but we're watching two different shows, both in the same size on the same screen in front of us, but there's not actually a TV on the wall.
That's that comes back to that whole thing of like, are you really sharing the experience? That's the whole social element of it, right? It's like, are you really sharing the experience though? Because you're watching a tearjerker rom-com and he's watching, Alien versus Predator, and you're crying while he. You're what's that?
I said I was thinking, Steelers versus Ravens, and I'm crying. And yeah, except you have that wrong. He watches the tearful romantic movies, and I watch the action movies. We're back.
Actually, that sounds entirely accurate.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a social aspect to that of are you really sharing the experience or not? And
right.
Gosh, is that going to separate us more or what? But nevertheless, yeah, I agree. I mean, we're sort of there now with multi-screens, right? Because I'll invite my 15-year-old, hey, come in the living room, hang out with us, stop playing video games, come in the living room, hang out with us, let's watch Elf. Right. He's like, okay, great. And he comes in and he spends half the time looking at his phone, interacting with friends and doing other things, while the rest of us are watching the movie. And I feel like he's not participating. And to him, that's totally no, this is how you participate.
Yes, because that's what he does when he hangs out with his friends.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're together. What are you talking about? I just texted you this meme. Didn't you see it? It's like, no.
Oh, my goodness. All right, let's see. Lindsay is asking, is there a social planning and publishing tool that you think is best? Obviously, there are lots and lots of tools out there, and there's more than one best, but do you have any that you recommend for planning and publishing, a calendar tool?
A calendar tool. Honestly, I've played with a bunch of them. I like Sprout Social. I'm a fan of Sprout Social. But when it comes to actual like calendar planning, I'm old school. We have a whiteboard and Post-it notes, and we use color-coded Post-it notes and move ideas around and figure out what things are going to look like, and then everything gets put into basically a Google Doc that's shared with the client, and we track everything through that. I haven't found anything I like enough that I would push the whole process into it. There's a new one that I just stumbled across. Oh, and I can't, maybe someone will remember what it is. The logo looks like sort of a cartoon octopus, and it's similar in concept to something like Buffer, but when you create your content, you put it in and you can tag it by topic, but you can also tag it by type of content. So like, is it an infographic? Is it a short burst video like you might use on Instagram, or is it a longer form video like you might use on Facebook? And it creates an archive for you, and then what it will do is it will auto-populate to fill the space in your calendar from stuff you've used in the past, so you're kind of refreshing content. So you can say, look, we're talking about augmented reality right now, so if I've written any articles on Pokemon Go, or if I have videos on Pokemon Go, slot that in for the week, and it will go pull out of it. And it's killing me that I can't remember the name of it. Maybe Chip might be able to find it. But it's new. It's just starting to come online. And it looked like it had a lot of potential. It's one of the few that I've seen in the last 6 months or so where I went, okay, I actually kind of want to get in and play with that. Because I think that idea of having sort of that cataloged database that you can pull into autofill, your content calendar with some maybe evergreen content, I like that for a functionality standpoint.
That sounds fabulous. I love that. I'm not familiar with it. I'm doing a quick search, but I don't want to make everybody wait while I'm digging around. I see one called Spreadfast. I don't know if that's it. I'll have to click.
I'm going to text Matt while we're talking on the next question and see, because he showed it to me, and see if he knows what it is.
All right. Well, let's see. We will move from there to Mayank. This is a great question about which social media platform to focus on. Which social media platform in 2017 will be best in terms of getting more traffic to our blog? Obviously, that's going to depend a lot on who your audience is, which platform.
The one that's targeted to your audience.
Yeah.
The one where your audience is and where you can best present your content. Again, there's not any one answer. Even today, Facebook is not the be-all end-all answer. Everyone for the most part needs to have a presence there, but it's not going to be the best platform. For the little Sour Patch Kids. Yeah, for Sour Patch Kids, they have done amazing things on Snapchat. And brands like Tiffany's and Jenny's Ice Cream and Columbus, Ohio, they've done amazing things with Instagram. And other brands are doing amazing things with Pinterest. It's going to be the one where you have the strongest ability as a company to get in and connect with your target audience, and there isn't any one be-all and all.
Yeah, yeah, it really is exactly that. Just different audiences, different demographics are going to live on different platforms, so you're just going to have to do the homework to sort of figure out which one is best for you, and then you're going to experiment with different kinds of content to see what kinds of content get people to click and come back, to your home base. As he said, he was saying that's what his real goal is to generate traffic back to the website. So, do people do a better job of that with video or with infographics or
Right.
teasers,
or live feeds, or social stories, or what?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I got to interrupt you for 1 second. It's meetedgar.com.
Meet Edgar?
That's the site.
All right.
Edgar, EDGAR. So if you want to type that into the window and make sure people have access to it, you have to put in for an invitation to get in now, but they do have some information up on the site where you can kind of look at how it works.
And you said .com?
Yeah, meetedgar.com.
Got it. Okay, I just shared that into the chat window, folks, so you can take a look at that. I also had earlier put the link in for Sprout Social. Faye is asking if you have maybe a 1 minute, 2 minute summary of what it is that you love about Sprout Social.
I liked that Sprout Social had, and honestly, Sprout Social has a lot of the same features as everyone else. I just physically and visually liked the environment they had. I like the ability to go in and assign something to a team member for follow-up. So for example, I could go in and look at all the conversation that was taking place on, say, Twitter and Pinterest and a blog channel and someplace else about a particular client. And then if it had to do with a piece of content, I could assign that to someone on my team to go and respond to. But if it had to do with maybe a question about billing or customer service or something like that, I could assign it to someone on the client's team and put it straight into them, and I could go back and very easily check to make sure people had followed up and actually done what they were supposed to do. So in terms of sort of management, I really liked it on that side. Publishing-wise, I didn't find it to be particularly different from Hootsuite or Buffer, any of the other options that publish, but I liked the way it managed teams and the interactions and allowed you to kind of assign and follow the history of what was going on.
That's pretty cool. I know that Hootsuite for quite some time has had a Teams tool like that, but you had to pay more to get more team members attached to your profile, to your account, and the interface was, and always has been, really clunky with Hootsuite, and kind of a high learning curve to really become a power user. But I've used those assignment kinds of features in Hootsuite, and even with their clunky interface, found it to be pretty powerful. So if it's wrapped up in a tool that has a better user experience.
I like the interface better on for Sprout Social, but it's also more expensive. I think Sprout Social starts around $100 a month, depending on how many team members you have. But again, for for a mid-sized client or for a mid-sized company, if you're a little teeny tiny company, nickel and diming it, that's not going to work. But if you've got some budget to work with, I found it to be a really nice tool for working with teams. Good
to know. Yes, okay, so that's Sprout Social, and then we're about up at the end of the hour. I have one, if you have an extra minute.
Sure.
This is not a 1 minute question.
Okay.
But I don't want to leave Monica hanging, so she's got a somewhat of a general question that maybe we can at least give her some guidance as to where to go look for this information. And the question is, how do we determine where our target audience is on social media?
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so there's a couple things. One, when it breaks down demographically. So, for example, if you target millennials, if you target people with aging parents. If you've got some type of demographic info, a lot of times just going out and searching, 2016 or now going into 2017 social media demographic data. You can get the demographic profiles that are sort of the overall profiles for the different channels to see, okay, older people tend to skew here, younger people tend to skew here. When it comes down to topically, you have to go in and actually spend some time in the channel running some searches for conversations. Twitter, in my opinion, is the easiest place to do this, to go type in some keywords and see what people are talking about. On Instagram, it's a little easier to go in and kind of make use of some of the hashtags to look for conversations, see what people are talking about. Snapchat gets a little harder because Snapchat makes discovery really difficult. It's one of the reasons that I think the millennial audience has really kind of migrated towards it, is they like a little more feeling of privacy and non-interruption. People have to choose more to engage with you. So that one is probably a little more asking around, doing some general market research, and maybe kind of, yeah, that one's harder. With Facebook, again, you can get some of the demographic data, and you can do some testing, which is really nice. But remember, a lot of Facebook conversation is not publicly accessible because of people's privacy settings. So the recommended approach from me for Facebook is to actually go in and set up some small budget level, even if it's just $50, some targeting for the interests, the age, the demographic, and check to see what type of response you get. At least look to see how many views you get and what the potential reach is. Outside of that, a lot of it is just taking some time to kind of play around and ask around and test to see what happens.
I think that maybe, Monica, if you have an existing email list too of people that are opted in to do an upload of a what do they call it, a custom audience in Facebook?
Yes, you can. Twitter will do that right now. Facebook does that, and Pinterest also does that, where you can upload your existing customer list, and it will go through and auto-match any accounts on that social channel that use that email list. Now, again, it's not going to be foolproof because someone like me, I've got like 8 email addresses, and the one that I use on Facebook, it's not even one of my everyday emails. It's what I used way back then. So it's not always going to be 100% accurate, but I think the last data I saw for Facebook in particular was that it picks up about 60 to 70% matches is what it tends to translate into. And as long as you end up with at least 1,000 matches, then you can create a custom audience out of that and kind of market to your existing contact list within the context of that particular channel.
Cool, cool, cool. All right, Monica, I hope that helps. And that's actually the last question we've got in the queue. And and we're at 10:34, so we have used our time. I could keep talking about this, though. This is where the direction of social is going to go over the next few years. Pretty darn fascinating. So maybe you and I will just get together sometime soon and keep this conversation
I'll be out in February. Yeah, we'll go get some coffee and we'll brainstorm all the AR opportunities that's going to pop up.
We'll fix it and we'll let everybody know what the future looks like.
We'll Facebook Live broadcast it.
There you go.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jen. Always fun to hang out here with you.
Absolutely.
And thank you to everybody else who joined us from all around the globe. We appreciate you taking time out of your day and cutting loose to hang out here with us. I hope you got something out of it. And please do feel free to join us for future webinars. There are lots of them queued up, both at the Market Motive site and at Simplilearn.com. You can find future webinars there, not only in social or digital marketing, but in social media, but across a lot of different topics. So lots and lots of webinars out there to take advantage of. We hope you join us here again soon. Until then, thanks everybody. We appreciate it. Have a terrific rest of your day. Take care. Bye-bye.